Whoa. Electronic music with a Russian guy talking in reverse. How about that? Hi, everybody. It's National Avocado Day. Although it should be National Avocado Hour because that's how quickly they go from ripe to rotten. Hi, I'm Kenny Webster. Thanks for being here. To those of you watching us streaming live on the internet, you know where you are. I don't have to explain it to you, but welcome. If you can retweet and share and, you get how social media works. We'll get more people to watch and listen. A lot of people listening on the radio right now as well. And some people are probably a little surprised at who my guest is right now. Let me get that mic in front of you, put a camera in front of this young man. Evan Mintz is here.
Hi.
You are one of the editors of the Houston Chronicle. You're in charge of the opinion section.
Yes.
You're an attorney.
Yes.
I want to paint a picture for those that cannot see you. You look like you host a talk show on NPR. Like, that is what you look like.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You're wearing a bow tie. You have a seersucker suit. I love a seersucker suit. It's linen.
Yeah.
It's a hot weather suit.
Well, I like to dress professionally, but I also live in Houston, so I wear linen. A necktie is just like an extra layer, so I go with the bow tie. And part of my job is to do community engagement, like go out in Houston, and I want to be recognizable, so people are like, okay, what does this Evan guy look like? Like, well, he's the dork in the bow tie.
So you're the bow tie guy.
Yeah, and like when I see people around, if they recognize me, I want them to come up to me and feel free to talk to me and tell me what their concerns are. So I want to be very recognizable.
You are well dressed, and I will tell you, Evan, I'm not even wearing pants right now. This is a talk radio station. I haven't showered in weeks, Evan.
Yeah. No, it smells in here.
It does. It really does. That's the Palo Santo. We burn it in here so you can't smell marijuana.
Listen, I work with journalists. Like, nobody has like good hygiene. All right.
Why is that? Why are people in the media so stinky? Don't
I think
they?
It's just because like we're obsessed with the jobs and like focused on other people and kind of forget that we exist.
Evan, I want to explain. Some people that are watching on social media are probably quite surprised to see you are considered to be a member of the local liberal intellectual community. You are, right?
Yeah.
And I am considered to be a right-wing comedian troll.
Right.
And so people would not think you and I would be doing a podcast together right now. There's a story behind this. I have friends that run a charity, Wheelchairs for Warriors, something I'm very passionate about. And that was like a month or two ago. They told me they were having budget funding issues. For nonprofits, that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really into Wheelchairs for Warriors because I know a little bit about how they run their charity. There's this thing happening in LA right now where everyone wants to know where the money went from Fire Aid. The guy that was in charge of the charity made this weird statement. He's like, when you donate to a nonprofit, almost none of the money goes to the front line. Like, that's a BS answer to me.
Yeah, that's not really true. That's not how it's supposed to go. And like, as a journalist, I know there's a lot of reporting to be done just looking at nonprofit 990s.
That's right. Yeah, just looking at what percentage is it more, or if more than half of your donation doesn't actually go to the thing you're donating to, I think you're getting ripped off. I think that sucks. I love Sunshine Kids. I love Wheelchairs for Warriors. I love Crowdsource Rescue, if you know who they are. It's kids with cancer, disabled military veterans, flood victims. As a right-leaning person in Houston, I think those are good charities to support. And with all three of them, vastly more than half of your donation goes towards the thing you actually donated to. So I made this joke video where I was like, hey, I'll pretend, we make a joke on the air. We lift weights and do CrossFit and we fly planes and we're vegans and, all the cliche things people brag about. I'm not a vegan, by the way. And I said, I'll pretend to beat you up in public if you'll donate to Wheelchairs for Warriors. And for an extra $10,000, I'll yell a racial or homophobic slur. We could get it on video. You'll look like a hero. I'll pretend to try to beat you up. You could beat me up in front of your girlfriend. That was the joke, right? And you replied, and you're like, I don't need you to do that, but I'll donate. So you donated to Wheelchairs for Warriors, and I'm grateful for that. It was very kind of you.
It's a good cause.
It's a very good cause. You and I have some mutual friends, including Charles Blaine from urbanreform.org. He's a very conservative, right-wing editor, author, works for Texas Scorecard. He's not what you'd consider left-wing, but he writes for the Houston Chronicle opinion section.
Right. He cares about good policy, particularly at a local level. And it's so hard to find folks who focus on that like hyper-specific issue. Usually folks just view it in like a Democrat versus Republican, red versus blue. He breaks through that and says, okay, is this actually working or not? Are the politicians doing the thing they're supposed to do or not? And that's the way I like to look at stuff.
Well, I'm glad that you're here because I invite liberals on the show. Usually no one will do this show unless it's a comedian with a comedy show to promote.
Yeah.
A journalist like Holly Hansen does the show a lot. People like Michael Quinn Sullivan.
Right.
And then politicians that want to promote their campaign. Usually it's not someone that's on the left. I invite college professors and people like that, and they Google me and they figure out who, and then they usually turn down the invite. This is a very popular show. Our podcast gets downloaded 80,000 times a day. people will, I always tell people will hear you on the show. That might be why they don't want to do the show.
Well, I want to be on the show because like it's my job to reach out to readers, to reach out to Houstonians, and frankly, anyone who cares about Houston, which you should if you're an American, because where do you think our oil comes from?
That's a
where
good
do you think
question.
your gasoline comes from? Or all the food that you're eating that comes through the port of Houston? Like, we are critical to the country, but we're not a city that really talks about ourselves. We don't do a lot of navel gazing. We don't do a lot of self-reflection. And a lot of that is because, like, as a city that's built on oil and gas, like, we don't need to actively sell our stuff. You're going to buy our plastics and petroleum whether you want to or not. San Francisco, on the other hand, like, they make tech products. That's their industry there.
And feces and hypodermic needles.
And they're getting a little bit better.
They line the streets with it, yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
It was bad. It's getting better. They still have issues. I will say their homicide rate is way lower than ours. Their stepping and poop rate is way higher than ours. So it like depends what it is you care about. But I'll say, like, to sell like gizmos and iPods or whatever, like, you need the media to cover and be like, wow, look at this cool thing that Facebook is doing, and wow, look at all this neat stuff. And so they have this like dynamic with the media that covers the city, whether good or bad. Houston has never had that. We don't really have a huge homegrown media apparatus to talk about what we do well here and what we do poorly here. And one of my big missions at the Houston Chronicle, and I've just been there for like a month, is really to try to talk about our city from the perspective of folks who live here, care about it, want it to be better, but also explain to the rest of the country why you should listen to us on the things that we're good at, like energy and immigration and trade, like the stuff where we're not New York, we're not DC, we're not LA. Houston is different.
Yeah, it's true. And also, one thing people often misunderstand about politics on a local, national, and state level is you could completely disagree with someone on national politics, right? But then when it comes to local issues, see eye to eye on everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I remember when State Senator John Whitmire was voting on any budget bill, I didn't agree with him on anything.
Right.
I think he's the best mayor any big city has right now. I think he is. I think of any big city in America, at least certainly in Texas. I can't say I know every mayor out. I guess, does Kansas City have a libertarian mayor?
I don't know.
I'm sure there's a mayor out there I'd probably also like besides San Diego, maybe. I don't know. But I ran into John yesterday at an Astros game, and we just started talking about politics. And I don't want to live in a city with rampant homelessness and crime where we like arrest violent criminals and immediately let them out of jail. John seems to agree with that, which is probably why he's at odds with Lena Hidalgo, isn't it?
Well, I mean, a lot of that is just personality stuff. You know, he likes to poke at her. She reacts. And also, Lena Hidalgo, at her core, is a policy wonk. She is most comfortable, like, reading white papers and saying, well, the data says this. And John, our mayor, he's a little bit more blue collar in his background. He goes on vibes and what people tell him. He doesn't always trust the data. He doesn't trust guys wearing bow ties like me. So there's a lot of tension there. But I will say this, like, Whitmire's done a good job of saying, I'm going to support law enforcement, of saying that, we're going to give cops a raise, which he did. But if I look at the data, if I look at the real-time crime index, we have seen homicides fall across the county. In Houston, for whatever reason, homicides are up 4% year over year. Every other crime is down. Homicides are up. I don't know why. Nobody knows what's going on.
I don't know either. Look at New Orleans, 50-year low for murder right now. And all they did was, in addition to, obviously, some people think that is attributed to cleaning up the border, export. You don't think so? You don't think exporting MS-13 had anything to do with it?
I think that I can look at the statistics put together by the Cato Institute, who are hardly liberal guys. They're sort of libertarian center-right.
Very much,
and they'd say, looking at the stats from Texas specifically, that the group least likely to be convicted for violent crime are legal immigrants.
Okay.
Then illegal immigrants, then citizens.
Okay, but there's a reason why that is, Evan. In a community where there are people around that are undocumented, whatever PC word we want to use, those are the people that don't call the police because they don't want ICE showing up. They don't want federal agents showing up. I learned this years ago from a friend of mine who ran a taco truck for a living. And it doesn't matter what I was doing late at night when my eyes were all glassy and red and I was eating the tacos.
I might have been there too.
That's true. But he told me something that blew my mind. He told me, in our community, we just don't call the cops because we don't want people to get deported. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I'd say that is probably true for your lower level offenses. But if you talk to the guys who study crime in America, they'd say a lot of our stats for low level offenses get pretty hazy. It's hard to hide a homicide.
Okay.
It's hard to hide a murder. And so if you're trying to really determine whether rates are going up or down across a lot of things or who does what, that is what you look at. And that's just the stats we have now. Now, I would always say we got to keep collecting. We got to keep studying. But I think that people have a lot of these predispositions in their mind about who's committing crimes and who's violent. And you can go back through American history and say, oh, it used to be the Irish. They'd say this about Italians. But you give folks a generation and they integrate and they normalize. And so a lot of stuff that people freak out about right now, I try to peel back kind of what folks' bias might be and look at the data. And also, I know as a Houstonian, like we are a city that is built by immigrants. Who's building our housing? Who's working in our restaurants? Documentation, not documentation. You know, it used to be that Republicans here were the ones who would like to turn a blind eye because they knew that's what powered our businesses.
They were getting their labor from it, right? Yeah. And then times changed. The political landscape shifted.
It did.
And now we see just the opposite.
I know.
Isn't it kind of weird, though, you're a Democrat, right?
No, I'm all over the place. And, you know, I count when I've worked at the Houston Chronicle and I do our endorsements, I've written more endorsements for Republicans than for Democrats. Now, admittedly, a lot of those are judicial races, but those are the places where I'd like to think the endorsement matters more because you know who you're going to vote for president. You know who you're going to vote for Congress. You don't really know who you're going to vote for courts.
Right. And when you're voting for the president, it's kind of like betting on the Super Bowl. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Something I find incredible is that people will come out for these local elections and they'll just vote straight R, straight D. And that's how you end up getting bad candidates.
It really is.
I'll tell you what, we got to take a break. People are texting me and messaging me questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, ask them.
The comment section, people can't believe Evan Mintz is here. What are you doing? He's a far left extremist. Why are you letting a commie on the air? That's not what they're saying.
All right.
More with Evan Mintz from the Houston Chronicle right after this. Don't change the channel.
Ken Webster's Pursuit of Happiness, a radio show that's just as good when you're driving around sober as it is when you're drunk at home.
If you are watching this live stream right now, and I assume you are because we just took a break from radio broadcasting, my guest at the moment is Evan Mintz. Evan Mintz, you have been publishing conservative op-eds in the Houston Chronicle, and there's a lot of conservative news media consumers watching this that would not expect that to be true, and apparently it is.
Well, I like to say, you know, it's not about Democrats versus Republicans. It is about Houston versus everyone else. And I want to get voices from Houston all across the political spectrum. We like to talk about Houston's cultural diversity and our ethnic diversity. Not enough is said about our political diversity. So, Kenny, I've got a piece coming from you that we're working on. I had a piece from Kyle Scott, who's in the Harris County Republican Party. I've got a lot of pieces from Charles Blaine, and we're going to get pieces from liberals and progressives, too. But what matters is, are you from Houston? Are you talking about Houston? Let's speak up. I'm sick and tired of reading op-eds from folks who are in Washington, D.C. or New York City. Like, get me something from home.
All right, well, we're going to go back on live right now, and if people have questions for you, I want them to type them in the comment section. Stand by, everybody. We are going back on right now. Experts say the universe will contract and inevitably cease to exist in 7 billion years. But hey, that's kind of Joe Biden's problem, isn't it? I mean, most of us won't still be around then. I am live in studio right now with Evan Mintz, one of the editors of the Houston Chronicle. You're a lawyer, and I don't want people to hold that against you.
Please don't.
No, but you worked at the DA office.
Very briefly, yes.
With Kim Ogg?
No, under Pat Lightgos.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who's that?
She was a DA.
Yeah. That must have been before my time. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. This was in like 2011.
Okay, yeah, that was before. I lived in Chicago at the time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I got out of there. It's like Davy Crockett. I got here as quick as I could.
Thank God.
People in Houston think that, this Texas is too right-wing, and yet people from Chicago moved to Houston, and they're surprised at how liberal it is here.
It's a big city, but Texas has a lot of things. And you can look back through our history and say, well, we've had a lot of progressives. We had LBJ and we had Ralph Yarborough. We got a lot of conservatives, too. But Texas is big. It's got a lot of different perspectives in it. And it always pisses me off when folks try to shove it into this Democrats versus Republicans view, particularly in a place like Houston. It used to be a Republican stronghold. Now it's Democratic. And I just say, look at what's important for the city: the energy industry, the port, the medical center. Like, this is the stuff that matters.
I'm getting a lot of interesting questions that people want me to ask you.
Okay.
The people at the Texas Scorecard have an interesting question. That
Cool.
You work in print media. They said they asked the question: is local print media news dying? And if so, why?
I don't think it's dying. I can see that we are changing, that people are not subscribing as much to print, but online subscriptions are going up, up, up. And frankly, as we've seen a decline in local media, largely through advertising has moved from print to online, and most of that has been owned by Google and Facebook. So you lose these revenue streams. You rely more on these online subscribers to drive your revenue. But we've seen it gone up. Publications across the country have gone up, and we're seeing this new recognition that if you really want to read smart stuff about the place where you live, folks who are getting paid to do the work, you've got to subscribe to your local paper.
All right, one of my favorite local writers, activists, whatever you call him, would be Charles Blaine. Charles Blaine also writes for the Texas Scorecard.
Yeah.
He has pointed out that you're giving a lot of conservatives the opportunity to write opinion stories.
Right.
I have an opinion story. I have an op-ed coming out in your publication very soon about the Senate race, and he said, what voices do you plan to elevate? It's the only newspaper in town that's publishing stuff like this. How are you going to approach coverage on local government now that you're there?
Well, in the opinion section, we kind of have three different things. We have those unsigned editorials that are written by a staff that are supposed to represent like the institutional vision of the paper. Then we've got our columnists and op-ed writers, folks who write with a name on it, and then your letters to the editor. So on the unsigned editorials, we're looking at, okay, what are places where we can move policy change in the city, county, at a local level? Where are the places where we can report on what's going on at City Hall and Commissioner's Court and really own that narrative? You don't get a lot of color commentary on stuff going on. You get a lot of dry coverage, and maybe folks are talking about Lena Hidalgo a little bit. But let's go in more there and kind of cover it the way folks cover Congress. Who's smart? Who's dumb? Who hates each other? We want to get on that. We're trying to look at places where things are actually going well in Houston. If media has a bias for anything, it's not Democrat or Republican, it's negativity. You report when planes crash and buildings catch on fire. But if we implemented a new policy a while ago and it's actually working well, I want people to know, because it's really easy to be cynical about politics and policy. It's harder to be optimistic, and I want to show when we're doing stuff well. And finally, we have those unsigned editorials where we do endorsements to tell folks, hey, we think you should vote for this person or that person. And I'm really trying to find new ways to do that, to give you the information you need, even if you don't agree with us, to really know who you're voting for and why.
All right. So on that note, I couldn't help but notice the Dallas Morning News, months ahead of time, has already come out and endorsed John Cornyn in the race against Ken Paxton for senator. Why, as an editor of an opinion section, why do you think they were so eager to get out and help John Cornyn?
I mean, I don't know if that was a formal endorsement, but they're definitely smacking around Paxton and giving Cornyn a thumbs up. And I got to say, if you're not a partisan in this, you're just coming in looking for a perspective, Paxton's pretty stinky. He was impeached. He wasn't removed. He's got a lot of allegations of self-dealing. And even if you just look at how he's run, like the AG's office, he's lost files. He had to dismiss a bunch of charges against sex traffickers because he wasn't on top of it. His own staff, who are pretty hardcore conservatives, tried to get him kicked out because he was using his office to benefit himself. Cornyn is an old school Republican. He's a Bush era Republican. So in the way that the party has changed, he has not. And there's things you're going to find that you don't like about him.
I've never worked in the AG's office.
Yeah.
It's my understanding the Republicans in the AG's office are guys like John Cornyn. They're old school neocon Republicans. And then it's a lot of liberals, which you wouldn't be shocked to learn that there's liberals working in a government office. I always try to explain it to guys like you like this. The Paxton impeachment, if you explain to a truck driver, an oil and gas worker, if you explain to some mechanic out in the suburbs who keeps up with politics, why Ken Paxton was supposed to get impeached, it's not going to make sense to them. It doesn't affect them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't upset to them. But then when you tell him his opponent is a guy that helped Joe Biden pass red flag laws, sent hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, wants to line the streets with more fentanyl-addicted veterans, that really pisses them off, Evan.
I mean, I will say that our rates of veteran homelessness have fallen by more than half since 2010. We've done a pretty good job at that. But
do you think that's because of Cornyn?
I mean, it's hard to attribute any one good outcome to any one politician. It's hard to attribute any one bad outcome to any politician. But Cornyn is a guy who tries to do his job as a senator. There are 100 senators, only about 15, 20 of them actually do the work. So you had Democrats who were going, let's just talk about the red flag law, the bipartisan gun safety law. you had Democrats really going gung-ho on gun safety, on gun laws after Uvalde and after a bunch of other like big mass shootings. And what Cornyn said is like, if I can get something through, it's going to take it off the table for them as a campaign issue. And I'm just looking at this from Cornyn's perspective.
Sure, it's an interesting political strategy.
And say that the bill that went through didn't really do a whole lot. It closed some loopholes in the way that you have to report gun
it
purchases.
Provided funding to states for red flag laws.
Yeah, to implement and study. But you have to do due process on any sort of, red flag law. The idea is that if somebody's in a place where they're a danger to themselves or others, you can go to a judge and say, like, listen, temporarily, you got to hold on to this guy's gun. Normally, you got to charge someone with a crime first before you do that. But there are circumstances, maybe it's suicide, maybe it's a mental health issue. And we're thinking, okay, is this actually going to work or not? It's not forcing it on anyone, but it's saying if you were going to do it as a state, like this is a way for you to try to do something around guns that doesn't just stop people from being able to buy them or put regulations on specific types of guns. So it's trying to like find a middle ground so that Democrats can't just run on it the next election. But if you're someone who says, I don't want any of this, and I want someone who represents me who's just going to go to the mat on this, then that might not be Cornyn. He might not be your guy. And there are going to be Democrats, too, who look at Democrats who cross the aisle to work with Republicans on things who are going to have the same sort of attitude.
I feel like for a Republican primary voter, putting your name on a red flag law is the kiss of death. Look, and Dan Crenshaw wrote a tweet once about red flag laws. He's never lived that down. I don't want to spend all the time talking about Cornyn, though, because you know how I feel about him, and I know how you feel.
But I'll say one thing about Cornyn. One thing that Cornyn did that I have a lot of respect for is after Hurricane Harvey, Congress was passing a recovery bill for us to get us the funds so we could rebuild and clean the streets and do all this stuff. They passed it out of the House. It was in the Senate. And just like the Office of Management Budget was supposed to release some funds to Houston, and they weren't doing it. And so Cornyn puts a hold on a Trump appointee to be like, listen, get us our money so we can move forward. And everyone else up in Congress is getting mad at him, and all the MAGA folks in the Senate are getting mad at him, and D.C. is getting mad at him. But he delivered the funds for us here in Houston. He went to the mat for us in Houston. He gets no political reward for it, but he fought for Houston. And that's something that sometimes in our political system today, like there's no carrots and sticks to just care about the place where you live.
And, but it's also about inauthenticity, Evan, because this is a guy who posts a photo of his ketchup-covered brisket. I mean, stuff like that matters. We see that. He posts a photo of himself reading Art of the Deal.
Oh, yeah.
After he comes out and says Trump's time is over. We're about to run out of time. Can you do some bonus with us on social media?
Yeah, sure.
I have people that are still sending me questions. I want to get to more of this.
We could do this again.
You wanted to talk about the Ike Dike. For those of you listening on the radio, this conversation is going to continue in we're going to do a bonus segment right now on social media. To those of you that are already watching us on social media, don't go anywhere. Stick around. More with Evan Mintz from the Houston Chronicle seconds from now.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. Tell the government to kiss your ass when you listen to this show.
All right, I want Evan to finish his point here. Here's a guy. You got to understand why primary voters don't like Cornyn.
Right.
Cornyn,
and this is something I want to learn.
He pretends to be a Texan, right? The guy, I mean, wherever he was born is irrelevant. The guy puts a cowboy hat on, speaks, leans into the accent, sort of like George Bush back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really your accent. You have two different accents. Jasmine Crockett does this. Hillary Clinton does this. Posts a photo of himself with a ketchup-covered brisket, he's reading Art of the Deal. He posts a photo of himself going to Trump Burger, but it doesn't negate the fact that back in 2022, he told everybody, Trump's over, move on, the Republican Party's got to change. And we all know John Cornyn was a George W. Bush Republican. It's clear who his loyalty is to. So to these grassroots, blue-collar Republican voters, they look at Cornyn and they just don't trust him.
I would say his loyalty is to the Republican Party. And so from my perspective, when he thought that Trump was not an asset to the party, that he was dragging the party down, he would say, like, well, we got to put the party first. He's a party man, and he's a D.C. man, and he works on policy there, and he cares about Republicans. But you've got folks coming into the Republican Party under Trump who aren't from that. So, of course, it doesn't really sync up well. But this is a guy who's been involved in Texas politics his whole life. This really is, at his core, a Texan. And Texas Republicans used to believe in free trade and they used to believe in free markets. And you got Trump coming in with a different perspective on stuff. And Cornyn, he wants to be part of the party. He wants to be a team player. like that's why he's doing these things. He could break at any moment and be like, I'm an independent. He could do like Mitt Romney did. But
sure,
he hasn't.
Or Bernie.
But he's never broken with Trump on any actual vote.
But isn't it interesting that Trump won't endorse him? Here's a little inside baseball stuff. Trump won't endorse him because of what we just said.
Yeah.
Supposedly, Trump won't endorse Paxton because of his association with Axiom, the political strategy group that helped DeSantis. Had you heard that before?
No, I hadn't.
Here's a little more dirt. Inside baseball.
Yeah.
I am told Lena Hidalgo is not going to run for county judge again. She wants to run for Congress now. The same person who told me Sheila Jackson Lee was having health issues, told me Sylvester Turner was having health issues, is now telling me Sylvia Garcia is having health issues. Have you heard this?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah,
That's
I wish
good
no
to know.
harm on any of these people, but that would certainly open up a place for Lena Hidalgo to go, and it would increase the annual income of her drug dealer. I mean, that would really help him out,
No, she's got mental health issues. I try to be sympathetic,
Okay, but we all do, Evan. We've all got mental health. Look at me. I tell dirty jokes on stage in nightclubs for a living. A question here from Tony Ortiz, currentrevolt.com.
Oh, cool.
He's a fan of yours. He says he's always wanted to meet you. He also wants to know what your favorite Texas legislative scandal is.
Ooh, favorite Texas. I mean, I'm a Houstonian, so I think Sharpstown is a good one. The Sharpstown scandal is a big one. But also,
Explain that for those that don't know. Sharpstown
so basically,
used
it's like
to be a mall.
No, well, before then, it was like the development of this neighborhood, and the developer was basically bribing folks in the legislature to get the bills that he wanted passed. And as a result, all these folks got kicked out of office, and we put in place a bunch of new ethics laws. So it's kind of like Texas version
How long
of
ago was
Watergate.
this?
This is the 1970s.
Okay, it was a while ago. Yeah.
But also, I like to
How
go.
old are you?
I'm 39.
Okay,
I'm a boring guy. Like, I'm a dad. I got 2 kids. I drive a minivan, and I wear bow ties.
And you're not even 40 yet. Okay, but
No.
you know about the history of the... Okay, go on.
I'm a Texan. One of my favorite ones to go way, way back is Ma and Pa Ferguson.
Oh.
Now, these guys, Pa Ferguson was kind of like the Trump of his age in a way. He was like this populist guy, conservative, who got elected governor, and he got in a huge fight with the University of Texas over their faculty, and he tried to veto their budget, if I remember the story accurately, and so he got impeached, and instead he got replaced by his wife, Ma Ferguson. And
That's right. I remember hearing this story. That was
so
right.
she's the first woman governor of Texas, and some of the scandals involved where they would just like give away pardons to people who are politically connected. And so there's a story of like, someone was opening a door for, Ma Ferguson and said, "Oh, pardon me." And it's like, "Oh, well, you have to talk to my husband for that one."
Yeah, that's a classic one, right?
Yeah.
I'd forgotten all about that. That's I'm a Hog, a fascinating story about Houston socialites.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Houston history is so underrated.
It really is. And, this is something that you should have Charles on and we can talk about it. There's no one really good book about like Houston history. There are a few. One I like is called Houston, the Bayou City, but it ends at like the moon landing, or you've got one, a recent one that came out, but like it just kind of starts with the oil bust,
Right.
Houston, the prophetic city. And so there's nothing out there. It's like, what's Houston like? And part of it is because we're a city that like grew very late. We're a young city. We're a city that like doesn't do a lot of self-reflection. The oil and gas industry like doesn't need self-reflection. They just drill and sell.
Sure.
And if you're looking for books about Houston, the best place to go is like to find a book about like, the history of the oil industry.
Yeah.
And also a lot of the people who live here, they just moved here. They're not multi-generational, or they're very young, or they don't even speak English. And so it's hard to get folks talking about Houston the way you get some long-timers talking about Pittsburgh or Cleveland or something like that. So my hope is that like over this next generation of Houstonians, we'll start to get some folks who are like, wait, why is Houston the way it is? Like, what do we do well and what do we do poorly and what could people learn from us?
All right, so here's one, and that's an interesting question. Here's one from Chad Prather, comedian, blogger, podcaster.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Tony Ortiz. He's got a Substack. Chad asks the question, what do you think about the rise of Substack, independent media, podcasters as the new op-ed voices? Are newspapers losing their monopoly on thought leadership?
Oh, they absolutely are. And I think it's a really insightful thing. And we were just talking about this. If I'm trying to make like the business case for paying for news from a newspaper, like it makes sense. I give them money. They give the money to a reporter. Reporter goes out and reports things that I wouldn't know otherwise. But if I'm trying to find like good opinion, first of all, a lot of it's free on the internet. It might not be like high quality stuff. Like people are sharing their thoughts on things
Constantly.
and it used to be you had to like get this from an op-ed or like a guy at a bar. But now you have folks out there.
Don't underestimate Guy at a Bar. Guy at a Bar is still a quality source of news, my
Listen,
man.
I've spent way too much time at Valhalla to like understate the value of a guy at a bar. But now, like if I'm out there paying for opinion, like yeah, there's a lot of people who have found success on Substacks and podcasts. And so the question I'm asking myself and asking like the Houston Chronicle opinion section is, what is it that they've done that has made them so successful? And I think it's a lot of things. Like one, you'll get folks who report on like a very specific field, like someone who's just writing about energy issues. Like,
Sure.
that's what I want to read. But it's people who also have a certain amount of authenticity. You're not just like reading some guy in a newspaper. Like you have this healthy parasocial relationship with them. And they are going on other people's podcasts and they are like writing about their personal lives and they're sharing things that makes them like interesting and trustworthy. But I think we also end up in the spot where like folks become very popular on social media or the internet or whatever because they're good at it. And then they start to talk about like, oh, well, this is like the best way to exercise, or this is the best like face
Supplements.
routine.
Yeah.
Yes, like what do they know?
Right.
Like why do you trust them? I don't know. Like I trust them because like we're humans. We're all people. Like genetically, historically, we're like evolved to live in like nice little communes. We're like I know something because someone told me, and I trust them because we live together and we're alike. And at a certain point, like in, the Renaissance, folks are like, hey, how about instead of that, we like write stuff down and like we test it and see if it actually works. That was pretty controversial. But we've learned like that's how we learn things are true or not. Through data, through research, through rigorous testing. And it's sometimes hard to break through to say like, listen, this person's anecdote is very convincing and like I trust them, but like, is it true? Like, oh, that's a harder question.
It's an interesting question. I was asking myself that last night as I laid my head down on my pillow, promo code WJ, and I was and I cleansed out my system, getthetea.com, also promo code WJ. Here's a serious question, though.
Yeah.
There's this conversation about how whether or not people still want to hear insightful arguments.
Yeah.
Or are we just addicted to outrage? But I think
Right.
another way of asking that question is, have we ever wanted insightful arguments, or have we always been addicted to outrage?
I mean, historically, when you would like have a newspaper or your local like 3-station news, you didn't really have a lot of choice in things. And so you kind of put trust in them to be like, well, this is the only game in town. So I'm just going to have to hope that they put good stuff in there that I like and is useful. And if you wanted something a little bit more partisan or extreme, you would subscribe to like The Nation or National Review or something like that. But he kind of knew that was like on the edges. Now it's the other way around. The consumers have choice. We live in an age of like cafeteria media and cafeteria facts. You can go on the internet and find whatever it is you want to consume.
Yeah, right.
And so
Confirmation bias. Yep.
exactly, across the political spectrum. And so the challenge that I've got is kind of looking like, one, what is it that people want to read that isn't in the market already, and how would I provide it to them? And two, how do I convince folks like we actually have value even if you're not predisposed to read us?
I find it kind of remarkable. Did you know I was almost a lawyer? I
did not know
I
that.
took the LSAT. I got a very average score.
Yeah.
I was all signed up to go to John Marshall Law School in Chicago.
Cool.
And then I ended up making prank phone calls for a living on the Man Cow Show. And you sort of a similar thing here. You ended
little
up
bit.
You ended up also following the road into media. I do wonder. Newspapers in big cities have a stereotype of being left-leaning. Now, to your credit, you're making the point here that in the op-ed department, you're trying to have conservative voices.
Right.
You're trying to have independent voices. It's not just people that watch MSNBC or CNN and that, worship at the altar of Bill Maher or whatever he used to be.
Right.
Because even he seems pretty center of the road
He's always
now.
been idiosyncratic and all over the place.
But what about the rest of the newspaper? Does the rest of the newspaper have a liberal bias?
I don't think so, but it sort of depends by how you want to describe that. Let me tell a story. I've been going around talking to a lot of different folks, and one of the most controversial things that we could write anything on, opinion news or whatever, is Israel and Palestinians, of course. And so when I talk to folks who are very pro-Israel, they'll complain, you guys are biased. Look at this article you ran. Look at this headline. You're getting these stats from the Hamas Health Agency. How can we trust anything you write? You're biased against Israel. I go talk to pro-Palestinian folks, and they go, you guys are in the tank for Israel. You aren't talking about how horrible it is. You're not calling it genocide. How come that you are so clearly biased for them and against us?
That's a good sign you're not being biased.
Well, something to take away is that people presume that balance means, well, I'll be half happy all the time or I'll be all happy half the time. But really, if you're balanced, you're never happy because you never get what you want. We are in a weird moment, though, because for the first time, like really in modern political history, educational attainment is a good predictor of your partisan alignment.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it used to be that you'd have, Republican PhDs and like you'd have blue collar Democrats, but we've really seen like a sorting based on education.
Sure.
So if I'm looking for someone to write for the Chronicle or someone who likes to read the Chronicle, we're going to end up in a place where it's going to be really hard to find a Trump voting newspaper writer today. And that is a challenge that every single newspaper has. Now, you can go out there and actively try to get columnists. It's a little bit easier. But just on that side, like we're in this bizarre moment. So a lot of effort is really being put into trying to make sure that we're covering all our bases. But another thing, too, is the bias of like, what are you covering? If I am, watching a conservative outlet, there's going to be a lot of coverage of illegal immigration. There's going to be a lot of coverage of places where liberals are doing dumb things.
Sure.
If I'm flipping open the Chronicle, it's going to be what happens at City Hall. What do the Astros do this week? Are they winning? Are they losing? What's happening locally? And it's a thing where it can come off as biased because, like, why aren't they talking about this thing?
It's not as political as people think it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
But progressives will say the same thing. All these people are doing these terrible things. Why aren't you talking about the pollution down to the port? Why aren't you talking about how poor people in Houston are suffering? It's like, well, like that's not exactly the news of the day. And that's part of the challenge, too. We're not reporting on the politics, we're reporting on the news, and it has to be new. So what happened today? What happened this week? We're just trying to keep up with it.
And I'm sure you'd admit that there's exceptions to that, where sometimes people's politics do bleed into the content itself, right? I mean obviously that happens, right?
If I see it on the news side, I don't see it on the news side. I see it on the opinion side, but that's kind of the point.
That's the point, yeah.
But some of the things to also keep in mind, too, is that, like, we're in Texas right here. So if I am trying to, like, do hard-hitting reporting on politicians, almost all the powerful politicians in Texas are Republicans. So it's like, why are you going after Greg Abbott all the time? Why aren't you going after Gene Wu? Like, Gene Wu doesn't have a lot of power. He tweets a lot. He says a lot. He doesn't have a lot of power. So it doesn't really do us any good as an institution that's trying to hold the powerful to account to go after people who maybe aren't partisan aligned, but, like, do a lot of things. And if you were in California, if you were in New York, like, you're probably going to be reporting more on ridiculous stuff that Democrats are doing because they have the power.
I agree with half of what you said.
Okay.
I think Gene Wu does have some power. I think
Really?
well, look at all the vice chairships in the legislature this session went to Democrats, and they vote for the Speaker of the Texas House by getting the moderates to work with the Democrats.
Yeah.
Would you not agree with that?
That's
and Gene Wu's their leader, so he must have some power, right?
I think that you're conflating a lot between, like, who has power on papers, like the elected chair of the Democratic caucus, and who are actually the people who have seniority and have these working relationships and how it operates. But, like, the Democrats wouldn't have been able to get that if you didn't have Republicans, some very conservative Republicans, jockeying for power. And a lot of this is legacy institutions of how the House operates. The House has almost always worked this way, where you've got Republicans and Democrats working together to care more about themselves than about, like, the overall Republican Party. And the line of the House used to be, and Pete Laney, the speaker, who was a conservative Democratic speaker, would say, like, members, vote your districts, and really getting folks to vote in ways that were specific to the folks they represent. But if you were saying, I don't want that, I want the most conservative position possible, then you're going to be pretty pissed off when they're trying to empower the individual members to do their own thing.
Do you get the impression with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick working with the medical marijuana industry to get rid of CBD shops and strip malls that people are voting their district right now? I mean, that just passed in the Senate again. Is that voting your district, or is that what Dan Patrick wanted a bunch of state senators to do?
That's a perfect example. And that's also why you see in the Senate, you're going to see a lot more stuff jammed through that just kind of Dan Patrick wants, versus in the House, people are empowered a whole lot more to say, well, I'm not so sure about that leadership. And that's why you've had these fights often between the House and the Senate, or the House and the governor's office. And on this thing with THC, I got to give credit to Governor Greg Abbott. He gave an interview with the Texan where he said, listen, what I really want to see is, like, no THC to kids. We don't want to see these things that are marketed or packaged for kids. We
I
don't
think
want to see
that's
stuff
reasonable.
and it's reasonable. And he said, look at Virginia as a model. And Texas, what we should be doing is saying, all right, you can sell like low strength THC. It's like saying, okay, like no liquor, no hard alcohol, but you can do wine and beer. Although the stuff that kind of upsets me, we had an editorial on this saying legalize it. Like if you want a major media institution in Texas saying legalize it, that's the Houston Chronicle editorial board, because we've said we're kind of lying to ourselves about where we are on this. We've already semi-legalized it.
Every state that surrounds us has access to marijuana.
Oh, absolutely. But we've legalized in this weird way where it's like you can't grow pot, like roll a joint and give it to Willie Nelson, but you can like grow marijuana in a low percentage way and distill the chemicals and then take the chemicals and then spray them on some gummies and then you eat them. Like that, you're allowed to do that.
Sure.
And that's so bizarre. It's like if we said like, okay, you can do Jell-O shots, but you can't brew beer. It's like, what? This makes no sense.
I think that you and I see eye to eye on that, Evan. I completely agree. And when you go to Colorado and Illinois, I ski. I go to Colorado.
Oh.
I'm aware of what the dispensaries are selling there. The stuff we're selling in Texas isn't quite as potent as what you could go in there and get something that'll knock you out.
Yeah.
It's my understanding none of this stuff in Texas is doing that. It will help with your inflammation. It will help you fall asleep at night. That I'm a fan of. I spoke the other day at the West Loop Houston Conservatives meeting, and pretty much everybody in the room, these are city Republicans.
Right.
Almost everyone in the room probably would agree with most of my positions as like a center-right liberty Republican. Somewhere between libertarianism and MAGA is where I think a lot of city Republicans fall right now. And there's one woman in the crowd who just had a very confused understanding of how it works. She's like, did you know you can walk into these stores and you take your phone out and you get a prescription and then they'll just give you weed? I said, well, that's not how it works in Texas at all. She was outraged over a system that doesn't even exist.
Right.
Ironically, isn't that the system Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick wants?
I mean, my understanding is that, and we'll see what it ends up being.
Right.
But it seems like they just want to make it so that you have to buy marijuana, if you do buy it, through a like medical dispensary with a very narrow scope of access, both physically where these are, but also the circumstances in which you can buy it. And I have no illusions about like marijuana. I've talked to friends who are like, oh, it's this incredible thing. It's this wonder. Yeah,
nothing's ever as great or as bad as they say.
It's got downsides. There are people who are predisposed to mental health issues because of it. We can look at other states where you've had people who say they used to be, monthly users become daily users become constantly stoned. It has negative externalities that we have to be aware of. But, as someone who has been a prosecutor in a misdemeanor court, like no one's really served by us making it illegal and having to clog courts with marijuana charges.
Sure.
And there's no real easy way to say like, okay, it's illegal, but like we don't want people to do too much of it. There really are these policy questions of how we get at it. And it's same with alcohol. It's same with gambling. It's same with all of these things. But my predisposition, I think the Houston way of doing things is that we've been a place of low regulation, and then we'll like target not the things we don't like, but the harms we want to prevent.
I was at Dakin Park yesterday, Evan, and you're not going to believe this. There was a guy selling weed on the street outside.
Gas.
Now, in the same hour that I witnessed that, I went into the ballpark, ran into a friend of mine, and he was smiling and laughing. I was like, what's going on? He's like, man, I just made $3,000 off this game. It's like, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
You can't get, DraftKings? We don't have that in Texas. He's like, no, there's this other app you can get.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait a second. It's happening anyway?
Yeah.
Look, and I don't approve of people breaking the law or anything like that, but nature finds a way. We've all seen Jurassic Park, right? I mean,
great movie.
It's for something like that. It's a social thing that doesn't affect most people.
Right.
I get it. You don't want the casino thing. Always pissed me off because when they proposed opening casinos, you and I can't open a casino. No. It's some guy. He's a billionaire. It's one of Tillman Fertitta's friends. We're never going to be able to do that, And that's not what the conversation's about.
No.
But when it comes to weed, I mean, growing a plant in your yard, who cares? I don't know. Hey, I don't want to waste all the time here with you talking about marijuana.
Let's do it. Let's keep talking about weed.
Well, we'll get high after the interview, I promise. But one question for you. And by the way, today, health experts came out and said marijuana smokers are more likely to have a stroke or a heart attack. And that's especially true if Taco Bell eliminates their dollar menu, I assume. But before we run out of time here, I asked Holly Hansen and Alex Mueller were texting me because they're watching this interview right now.
Great.
You have a lot of opinions about the Ike Dike.
Yes.
Ike Dike, besides being a hilarious name,
Yes.
and I know there were some people that made some inappropriate jokes about the Ike Dike during Anise Parker's tenure. I don't approve of that. But all that being said, you don't have to laugh at that. I can see you trying not to. There is a lot of confusion about what it is, because we've had this happened. Hurricane Ike happened before I moved to Houston.
Really?
I moved here in 2012. Ike
So
was,
you're a real like Houston newbie. I mean, there's no such thing as a Houston newbie. If you moved here, if you got caught in traffic, if you're sweaty, like you're a Houston.
You're a
Houstonian.
Houstonian, yeah. I've lived here most of my adult life, but I'm also a millennial. So Ike happened before I moved here.
Right.
The only things I've ever heard about the Ike Dike are two things. Michael Berry and his friends say it's too expensive, it's not practical, and Evan Mintz from the Houston Chronicle's obsessed with it.
Yes.
That's all I know about the Ike Dike.
Right.
I hear you talk about it and how it's great, and then I hear other people go, oh, it's too expensive, but no one ever really explains anything beyond that.
Right. So my greatest fear in life is dying in a flood, and I really don't want to
Not
do
a coffin or
Nah.
burned alive?
No.
No poison, acid attack, none of that?
All these things, like, they're scary, but it's, like, not likely to happen. I very well could die in a flood. I live in Houston. We get lots of terrible floods. We get lots of bad floods here
Can you
in
swim?
Texas. I'm a very good swimmer.
I believe that, yeah.
But, like, it doesn't matter at a certain point if you're, like, caught in a hurricane. And so, like, something that's really inherent to, like, the history of Houston is, like, the 1900 hurricane that like came over Galveston, destroyed Galveston, still one of the most expensive natural disasters, deadliest natural disasters in U.S. history.
Right.
And because of that, Houston thrived because we dug a ship channel to say, hey, let's protect all of our important shipping assets by creating an inland port that's like protected by a Galveston Island from any major floods. But over the years, over the decades, we have put so many petrochemical facilities along that. We've got pipelines, we got refineries, we got chemical plants and storage and all of this stuff. And when Hurricane Ike came through, we got lucky. It moved a little bit to the side and kind of struck east of Houston. If it moved a little bit further west, because hurricanes always go counter-cyclical,
Right.
it would have been blowing up into Galveston Bay and pushed all of this water into Galveston Bay, basically a 25-foot storm surge into Galveston Bay. And it's not just flooding homes and communities and putting like Galveston Island underwater. It is smashing into all these refineries and chemical tanks and storage facilities. And so it would have been Exxon Valdez times 3.
Sure.
But instead of being in the middle of like nowhere, Alaska, it's in the middle of where 6 million people live.
Fourth biggest city in America.
And the single most critical petrochemical complex in North America, if not the world.
Wow.
So suddenly gas prices go up to $10 a gallon. You can't fly anywhere because we don't have jet fuel. Our planes, our military planes can't fly anywhere because they don't have the fuel they need. All of these blue collar jobs are suddenly sunk. All of these communities have been inundated by chemical filled waters that we don't even know what's in it. It'd be like Chernobyl, except instead of Chernobyl, where like we knew it was radiation, we don't know what a lot of these chemicals are because the federal government doesn't track it. And
Good superhero origin story, though.
oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, you didn't think of that.
And then if you like fishing, like say goodbye to Galveston Bay. It's dead. And this isn't just like a recreational thing. It is one of the most productive estuaries, one of the productive bays in the country. So say goodbye to a major source of food. So the idea is that we need to make sure that this sort of storm surge never happens. After that 1900 hurricane, Galveston built a massive seawall across the front of it. You know, you go down to the beach and they got this big wall, and they elevated the island by like 10 feet. They just built it up. So the idea is, let's go further. Let's extend that wall all the way down the island, all the way up the island, all the way to Bolivar, and then we build a big gate across that you can close to protect Galveston from any major storm surge. It would be very expensive. There are still questions about the right way to design it, but the thing to look at it as an insurance policy. All you have to do is use it once, and it pays for itself.
I will say this, Evan,
Yeah.
as a Liberty Republican,
Right.
if you ask me, should the government spend money on, I'll say stop right there.
Yes.
But this idea comes from 2008.
Yes.
I mean, that was John Cornyn and George W. Bush's Republican Party. Back then, fiscal conservatism was very popular. The Heritage Foundation was all about Thomas Sowell. They were really into Milton Friedman
Right.
and Austrian economics, and that's changed.
Yes.
This new Republican Party doesn't really seem to mind spending money. if this was now I'm not endorsing the idea or anything, but I'm telling you, I actually think we live at a time now where Republicans might embrace this. And if they do, and Donald Trump comes out and says it, you will become a Nazi for advocating for it.
I will not. I do not like Nazis.
I don't think anybody does. Yeah.
But no, listen, if anyone comes out and supports it, like, they have my thumbs up and a pat on the back. The problem is that Trump has not endorsed it. He has kind of made fun of it and said it's really expensive.
He's talked about the Ike Dike, has he?
Yeah.
I've never heard him talk about it.
Oh, yeah,
I believe you. Yeah.
No, so after Harvey, like, Abbott went to him and said, like, like, Trump, we could use money to get this thing started and start spending it. And he's like, oh, like, Abbott told me to build this big thing. It costs so much. Hey, if we build it, could you name it after me? I'm like, yeah, sure. But, like, you got to put it on the agenda.
Is that really what he said?
Yeah, he said that.
That is so Trump.
And I would say, like, yes, if he said, I'm not going to do anything until we build the Ike Dike thing, yeah, name it after him. That'd be great. In the same way we've got, like, the Johnson Space Center, you could get, like, the Trump wall, like, build the wall, but, like, build it over here, but like, it just hasn't moved forward. The Texas Republicans, to their credit, have created a special taxing district to cover kind of the multi-county region around Galveston Bay to help levy taxes. And, like, if Republicans want to raise taxes, it's important to help provide those matching dollars for the federal government. To say, like, because that's how we build a lot of major infrastructure projects. And honestly, Houston was the first place to do that. When we built the Port of Houston, when we dredged the Houston Ship Channel, we said, we'll raise local dollars to match the federal dollars. No one had done that before.
Sure.
So it's an incredible, like, innovation for how you get stuff done to get table stakes on these things. And we're saying that right now. We're going to get table stakes on it. And one of the major entities that's in charge of this, the Gulf Coast Protection District, is headed right now by a guy, Colton Baker, who worked in the first Trump administration. So there are Trump people involved, there are Democrats involved, but there are people who are against it. There are environmentalists who say, no, we can't disrupt the natural order of things, or it'll be too expensive, or, like, why should we protect the oil and gas industry? And there are conservatives who say, I don't want the government to build anything. It costs too much money. I don't trust them.
Evan, there's one thing we could do to really save some money on this project.
What is it? What do you got?
Get illegal immigrants to build it. Just get them, round them all up, bring them all together, have them put that thing together.
Listen, you go to any building in Houston, who do you think built it? Come on.
I'm aware. I'm from Chicago. It's the same thing, but Polish guys. So
yeah.
Evan, I want to wrap this up, but I would like you to come back and do this again.
This has been great.
You're one of the only liberals that's accepted this invitation. The other one recently was Sarah McGee. If you know.
Oh yeah, I saw she was on.
This did not end quite as friendly as this did.
I'm sorry.
I think Sarah was here to try to dunk on Republicans. I don't have an issue.
I'm not going to do that.
Well, no, I thought you were quite diplomatic, and I appreciate that. If people want to check out your work, obviously X, and you really came here today to make the point that the Chronicle is trying to have more conservative opinion, to have more Republican voices, and that's the point of you being here today.
Well, we're trying to get Houston voices, and Houston has a lot of Republicans. So I'd say go to HoustonChronicle.com. Please subscribe, and we got good news coverage. If you want to know how your taxpayer dollars are being spent at the city and county and schools and state, like, that's what we do.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, I'm Kenny Webster. To the rest of you, thank you so much for watching. Retweet, share, like, click subscribe. You guys know how social media works. Next week, next Friday, me and Jesse Payton will be on the road. We're doing stand-up comedy in Hattiesburg at Brewski's, so come check that out. And then on a week from this Saturday, we'll be in Denham Springs at a place called Southern Rhythm. Those are, that's not going to be political. It's the couples-themed comedy show that we do. Bring your date. It's going to be amorous and salacious and all those other fun adjectives. I'm Kenny Webster. I love you all. We'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning for more of What You Bought a Radio For. Have a great day.